that the death rate was 5 and 6 times higher than babies born within marriage, the state's response was, this is shocking, this is terrible, but it doesn't fall within our remit.
These babies were illegitimate. They were quite literally illegal. And unless there were families who were willing to adopt them, and unless the nuns could make in some ways some kind of either financial or political social capital in being the people who provided these babies for adoption, there was very little interest in them. They were a problem. And there was a huge emphasis on building a secure nation distinct from Britain. We were a very poor country, and there was an enormous kind of emphasis on our moral purity. We may be poor, but we were more pure than dirty Britain. And so this kind of idea of a purity of our nation and the purity of the character of the people became a very kind of excited idea. And of course, all of this purity was fought out on the bodies of girls and women.
An apology is at the heart of this story.
Because you know the sorrow and suffering of forced adoption.
8 years ago, that's exactly what 250,000 Australian women received when their horrific stories of forced adoption came to light.
Today, this Parliament, on behalf of the Australian people, takes responsibility and apologises for the policies and practices that force the separation of mothers from their babies.
To date, there has not been an official acknowledgement by any level of government in Canada of the pressures that were put on unmarried pregnant women to surrender their babies for adoption and the pain and humiliation that it has caused them.
Between 1945 and 1971, an estimated 350,000 Canadian women were forced to give up their babies for adoption simply because they weren't married.
I was mourning for a child that I'd lost.
I loved her so much. I still love her. I'm her mum.
My son and I, our lives were stolen. And you never, ever get that back. Ever. Where did they think all these beautiful babies were coming from? Oh, they gave them away, they gave them away. Why would any girl in her right mind give her baby away?
You mind if I just cut in there, please?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, look, where adoption has been carried out unjustly, I mean, of course, that's to be condemned, apologies to be issued, and we need to get to the truth and you know, reunite as many children and their mothers and parents as possible. But like adoption, when it's voluntary, is obviously a very good and worthwhile institution. It's often an alternative to abortion, for example, which is frequently the way we deal with unwanted children in the world today.
It's hard to believe that in 2020 we're standing here and having gone through decades of breaking free of the stranglehold of the church and this state on things like homosexuality and abortion and divorce.
In Sweden, between the 1930s and the 1970s, they had a eugenics program that swept up many lone parents, treated them as asocial, and frequently sterilised them. And this carried on until the 1970s. Sometimes it forced these women to have abortions, and they had institutions. And this was in social democratic Sweden, where the Catholic Church has no influence whatsoever.
According to a government report published in 2000, 21,000 people were estimated to have been forcibly sterilized. 6,000 were coerced into a voluntary sterilization, while the nature of a further 4,000 cases could not be determined.
The Center for Investigative Reporting has revealed that 2 state prisons in California have been doing sterilizations of female inmates without consent. Now, this involves 148 tubal ligations between 2006 and 2010, and in layman's terms, it means that they tied these women's tubes without consent.
As part of a budget deal signed by Governor Gavin Newsom, the Forced or Involuntary Sterilization Compensation Program will allocate a total of $7.5 million to survivors of California's sterilization.
Today, we're going to read the babies' names. With no speeches, with no prayers, the babies' names speak for themselves. And I'm going to start with my sister, Margaret Mary O'Connor, died aged 6 months.
Patrick Joseph Coleman, 1.
Why are these babies in this place? What the hell is the story?
She was raped by the caretaker, and she didn't tell anybody about that rape until she was 70. She was so adamant it was rape. He raped me. And she was taken to a mother and baby home because she was pregnant outside marriage. She remembers so clearly the day, pegging out the washing. The nun came, told her the child of your sin is dead, and let her go the same day. Anybody who was cheeky or would disagree with the nuns or demand to see their child, they were the problem. So she was moved to Lockray Industrial School.
I think we have to start with the fact that it's a crime scene and we need to know what happened. this is my sister's death certificate. And then it gets really murky. So, Mary Margaret, whooping cough, cardiac failure, certified. Why did my sister die of a treatable disease, whooping cough?
The cause of death went from measles, gastroenteritis, meningitis. There was one for laryngitis, which doesn't add up. There's some abscess up the scalp, abscesses on body. There's a variety. Whooping cough as well would have been a killer at the time as well.
Why would a baby die of whooping cough? Why did some babies die of heart failure? Why did babies die of malnutrition? How is this happening?
When I saw the death certs, something struck me. The reasons for deaths seemed to be in more or less blocks. You would get measles, 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 etc., etc. It was almost saying, putting something down for the sake of it. From my research, when babies had these common diseases, they didn't separate them. Cots were still very much together. The Bonsecourt sisters were a nursing congregation as they are today. They would have knowledge of medicine and care. After all, their logo is, and always has been, to offer care and help for the sick. And especially Tuam, it shouldn't have had such high rates of death. When I saw the death certs, something struck me. The reasons for deaths seemed to be in more or less blocks. You would get measles, 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 etc., etc. It was almost saying, putting something down for the sake of it. From my research, when babies had these common diseases, they didn't separate them. Cots were still very much together. The Bonsecourt sisters were a nursing congregation as they are today. They would have knowledge of medicine and care. After all, their logo is, and always has been, to offer care and help for the sick. And especially Tuam, it shouldn't have had such high rates of death.